welcome to Immediate Immersion Live. How's everybody doing today? Today we're going to talk about homework. To give or not to give? That is the question. And we'll get at it right after the intro. Hello and welcome everybody. Today we're going to be talking about homework. How is everybody doing today? Let me know in the chat. Well, Ash is doing good. Awesome. Nice to see you here, Ash. Well, let me give you a couple things to start with here. First, let's answer the question yes or no about the homework. Well, it's not an easy question. I will say in the first probably 10 years of my teaching, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 7 or 8. Hi, Jody. 20-minute mini classes start this Wednesday. Awesome. Good luck for you. So about my first 7 or 8 years, maybe a little bit less, I gave homework regularly. Monday through Thursday, I would give homework just because I thought it was something that you were supposed to do as a teacher. I had no really rhyme or reason other than that was customary. I was supposed to give homework on Fridays. It was a school requirement, but I never did. I told the kids, don't say anything and we won't get homework on Fridays. We were also supposed to give homework over the breaks. I didn't want to do that either. So Monday through Thursday, I gave out homework. And then I started a new school. We were opening a brand new school, and this was a completely different type of a school. And it was a block schedule. So we had, I'm trying to think what this, so it was an ABC schedule. So Mondays were A's, Wednesdays were A's, Tuesdays and Thursdays were B's, and then Friday was the catch-up day, C's, where we saw all the classes that day. And the problem was I worked in Las Vegas, and the way that the districts work in Nevada is by county, not by city. So think about the whole southern cone of Nevada. That's Clark County. And so I could have kids who were literally on the border of Nevada and Arizona, and I could also have kids on the border of California and Nevada. So I had kids coming from all over, and some of the kids were commuting an hour, hour and a half, sometimes even more to get to school. So the parents were complaining about how much homework was being given by all the classes, especially a lot of the core classes. Had not been used to having a block schedule before, so they were giving twice as much homework because they were counting, I'm giving you homework for Monday and Tuesday because I don't see you on Tuesday, instead of realizing that the Tuesday teachers would be giving homework that day. So parents were complaining. They said they was giving way too much homework, and by the time they got to or from school, already losing about 3 hours extra day, hour and a half coming and going each way, it was just way too much. So our administrators asked us, as a team of teachers, what could we do about the homework? Well, world language, we said, okay, we have no problem. We'll just drop it. We won't give any homework. And that was the first impetus of my decision of giving homework or not giving homework. It really wasn't my decision. I mean, not like a thoughtful decision, like there was a reason behind it. We were just doing it just to make things easier for our students. And guess what happened? Absolutely nothing. Kids' scores didn't go up. Kids' scores didn't go down. Their ability stayed the same. So then I started questioning, was homework really necessary? That was my thing in there. So I'm thinking, I'm not so sure about homework. I know why we're not giving it now at that school, but even when I left that school and went to a different school, I continued to not give homework because I'm like, they weren't any better for doing homework. Plus, I was afraid, who's doing that homework? You never know who's going to be doing the homework. Is it Google or some other translator? Is it a friend? Is it a family member? Who's doing the homework? Is it the actual student? I even had one group of students who were so intelligent that they thought it would be fun to do a carpool type thing with homework. So a homework pool. So one kid would do the homework one week and the other kids in the group would copy, and it would rotate each week. So each kid only did homework once, 1 week at a time, and everybody else would copy from that. So I have to give them credit for being really smart about things like that. But then, so I started really thinking about it and doing some research. So I already knew that it wasn't hindering my kids' learning or proficiency for not doing homework. But I needed to justify it more than that in case someone asked me. And so then I found Alfie Kohn. And what I love about Alfie Kohn is he says there shouldn't be a second shift. And that's basically what homework was. So homework was to give kids more practice, to learn on their own, to do some activity for the class, to extend the class period time. So when the kids were done with school, they went home and did more school. And he called this the second shift. And I thought about that for a moment and saying, yeah, I kind of see how that is. And on top of that, most people, teachers are different because the way our work is completely different from other industries. But when people clock out at the end of the day, they don't want to go home and do more of their work. And kids are no different. Their work is school. They're in there for 6 to 7 hours a day. That's it that they need to do. They need time to hang out with their friends, to hang out with their family, to do their sports and other activities, and to relax and let the brain relax from school. Adding another hour to 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours worth of homework when you add all the classes up, was really giving them a second shift. And people in the real world don't do work after the work ends. Most of us. So I thought about that and I agreed with them and I said, kids need to have time to be kids. It's not like they can make up that time later when they finish school. Once they're finished being kids, they're finished being kids. So that's not going to help them. So for the next few years, I stopped giving homework and never gave homework at all. And then came the pandemic. And the pandemic changed some things because now we were on distance learning. In the first part of the pandemic, from that March 2020 until the end of the school year, there really wasn't a requirement for kids to attend school. It was kind of a weird time, but we had to teach online asynchronously and give them assignments to do. But we couldn't grade them. There was no grades for that last part of the year for that time. So I got in the habit of having to give them activities. And then I discovered Flipgrid. It's now called flip.com. And when we came back in the 2021 school year, the first 3 months we were still distance learning, but it was active, synchronous distance learning. And so I had to give them something to do. So I started with this Flipgrid. I had just learned about what Flipgrid was, and I started using the Flipgrid just as like an oral exit ticket. Nothing complicated. What were 3 things you learned today? Whatever the daily question was, can you answer that in Spanish? Those types of things. And I learned in that time watching those Flipgrids that I got a better feel for a kid's proficiency level, at least oral proficiency level from that time. Plus, I got to learn their faces and their names. So when we went back during the live in November, I knew who they all were, which normally it takes me months. I barely learn their names before the end of the school year. I have a real problem with names. So it helped me with the names, but also what was so key for me was that I was getting a good feeling for their proficiency level, much more so than I would on a sporadic speaking quiz or test that comes every few weeks. We were doing regular Flipgrids, and I was getting a good feel for each student and their ability to communicate in the language. So I continue that even after the pandemic ended. And then last year was a full year back, starting from the first day of school. And then this year, and I've continued using the Flipgrid assignment. Now, I do it only once a week. It takes them less than 5 minutes. And I know that it doesn't necessarily help them proficiency-wise. It does help them build confidence, but it doesn't help them proficiency-wise at all. But it helps me. It helps me tremendously because I get a feel for their oral proficiency where I wouldn't, or it would take me a lot longer, a lot more assessments before I would get a good feel for where they were. So yes, do I still believe not to give homework? Yes, predominantly I am the believer of not giving homework, mostly because of that second shift. But because this one assignment that I give is so small, so short, takes less than 5 minutes, even 5 minutes is too long, and I get so much benefits. I'll talk right about that for you, Jody, in just a moment. I get so much benefit from it academically that I get a good feel. I use it as an assessment tool. It's valuable for me, so I'm going to continue doing it. So one homework assessment most weeks, not all weeks. Any week where we do not have a full 5 days, I don't give them this assessment at all. So Joanne says, how do you keep Flipgrid assignments spontaneous? My kids always write out their script and then pretend they aren't reading. Well, I tell them right off the bat they can't read, that they are not to write it out. And I don't make them elaborate type things where they feel the need to do so. I said if I figure out that they're reading or that they used a Google Translator or any of that stuff, they're not going to get credit for it at all. And I look at these over a period of time. So we have 12 weeks in a grading period, and I'm going to look, I watch them every week, but I am going to 2 or 3 times per the grading period, I'm going to evaluate them and give them a grade based off of a speaking rubric. So if they got some bad grades on there because they cheated by doing it with a Google Translator or they read something, that's going to lower their overall grade. But because I don't make it a complicated affair, they really don't feel the need to do so. My key is to keep it simple. So most of the time, we have a question of the week. So in Spanish 3, my question of the week is, what would you do if you had a hippo? So we're talking about that this week. That's our conversation topic. And then I will give them the Flipgrid assignment that they will answer the same question on Flipgrid. It's a sentence, maybe two. It's nothing really elaborate, and we did it in class together first. Or in my level 2s, I'm asking them, what is your favorite number? For my special class, my level 1B, we call it, it's for kids who are disenfranchised from school. They have behavior issues, academic issues. They fail level 1 the first time, and so we have a special class set up for them, and they are my most challenging class. Their question this week was, what's your favorite cereal? We went over that today, but I'll be honest, they're not going to do it at home. So we have a really short day on Wednesdays. So on that day, I will give them about 7 minutes to work on their Flipgrids during the class time. I don't do that for any other class, just for them, because otherwise it's not going to get done and I get much more buy-in that way. But because it's so simple, they don't really feel a need to have to script it out. The other ones I usually give after, if I don't give a question of the week, I'll give, what 3 things did you learn this week? Or what 3 things did we do this week? Or what 3 things from the story this week? Or if we're reading a novel, I'll ask them to tell me 3 things from the chapter that we read that day or whatever, something like that. So nothing really difficult, nothing that really needs to be, that they need to actually, memorize, script out, write out, use Google Translator. Keep it simple. And even though they're simple, I get a good feel. I can feel for their confidence level, their fluidity of the language, their pronunciation, all of that I can get from that time. Great question. So, for the rest of you here, who gives regular homework? Who doesn't give regular homework? What's your feeling on that? Joanne says, how's Flip for background noise when they record in class? I take them outside for me. I know you are on the East Coast, so it's not easy for you. Outside my door is outside. Literally outside. That's how California schools are built. We don't have an internal classroom, so we go out and spread out in our quad, and they will record during that time. Though I have had during not this particular assignment, but other assignments where I had them record, if the kids talk softly enough and spread out enough, it's usually not that big of a deal. I can still hear background noise when I watch it, but because they're right in front of the microphone, their voice comes through crystal clear. Okay, so that's the thing about whether or not to give it. When to give it. So even when I used to give weekly homework or daily homework Monday through Thursday, I would assign all of the homework on Monday. And then I would give them time to do it I'd give them a whole week to get it done. Let's see, Jody says, I stopped giving homework. I would drown in the paperwork and wouldn't give kids enough feedback. Better to practice in class. I agree with that. That's why I keep mine really, really simple. I don't like the paperwork just like the kids don't, so I don't want to have that much in there. So I completely agree with you, Jody. So as I said, I would give it on Mondays, and then I would have it due the following Monday. So kids could use their time management skills, which I was trying to teach, to plan when they were going to do the work for the homework. So If they wanted to use the weekend, they could, but they weren't required to use the weekend at all. They could do it during the week. If they were busy during the week, they could use the weekend. So I gave it on Monday, and it was due the following Monday. So I gave them plenty of time to turn it in. Now that we use a learning management system, they don't have to physically turn it in class. They will turn it in on our learning management system, and they have till midnight to turn it in. So that it gives them a little bit extra time as well. So I give mine always, even now with my flip grids, I give them out on Monday, and then they're due the following Monday. Again, it takes less than 5 minutes. They can use their phones. They can use their Chromebooks. They can use their personal computers at home, however they want to do it. But I give it on Monday, and then it will be due the following Monday to make it easy for them. And they've got a full 7 days to get it done. So whether you're giving 4 or 5 days of homework like I used to, or you're only giving one assignment, give them that freedom to get it done so they can find out when it fits best into their schedules. And I find the turn-in rate is better that way. Now, I do remind them towards the end of the week that, it's due, don't forget about it. Because I talked about it on Monday, it's in the learning management system already, but then I remind them on Thursday and Friday again that it's due so that they know. Does anybody do something similar or different with giving homework? Okay, so what to give? Now, there's a couple of schools of thought on this, and when I used to give regular homework, I used to categorize my homework under speaking, writing, listening, reading, and culture. The 5 categories. Let's move over here. The 5 categories of my grade book. I taught my kids how to look at the grade book and look at where they were weakest in. Were they weakest in listening, reading, speaking, writing, or culture? From there, let's say they were weak in speaking. That was where their lowest grades were. Well, then I had a series, like a menu of homework assignments that went under speaking. I would have a menu of assignments for writing, listening, reading, speaking, etc. So they had an option of multiple assignments to do. They would choose based on what was their lowest skill at the time, so they could work on that particular skill. Ash says, I don't really assign homework. I try to give them time to complete it in class. Awesome. Yes, you have to also look at your clientele, who you're serving, and seeing which one. That's what I do for that one period class that is really difficult, and it works for them, but I don't do it for my other students. But again, I only give the one assignment. So I used to do that. So they would have a menu they would choose based off their weakness, and then they would choose from the menu. I might have like 7 or 8 different options in there. And since I gave homework Monday through Thursday, they had to choose 4 of them to do. And then they would have a week to turn them all in. And these were based on things that would help them improve that particular skill. So I know that speaking does not help your speaking proficiency. you need to hear more language. So all of the activities under the speaking section would be listening activities. Listening to a YouTube video and answering comprehension questions. Watching your favorite TV show in Spanish. Easier said in Spanish than other classes. The simultaneous audio programming button. Lots of stuff is transmitted also in Spanish in the United States, so that was easy for them. They could watch, Friends or whatever. Netflix. When I did this way back when, Netflix was not as big as it is now, but Netflix, you can watch things in multiple languages, so they can flip it over into Spanish. Disney movies that they like, they can watch those. I'd have all these different activities. And I would also pre-record some stories that I did for them to listen to and answer comprehension questions. So they could choose a Disney movie to listen to in Spanish. They could watch a TV show in Spanish. They could watch a YouTube video in Spanish from the selection that I found that I wanted them to do. Or they can choose one of the stories that I pre-recorded. And those would be my speaking ones. For writing, I know that to improve writing is not the actual act of writing, but they need to read more. So those are reading activities for them to do. Read a novel chapter. Read a longer story that I wrote. I'd find other other things for them to read, so they would have more read. Read a children's book. Lots of different varieties is what I would include in those types of things. For listening and reading, what they generally needed was vocab building. For them to understand what they heard or read, they needed to work with vocabulary. So I created Quizlet sets of vocabulary that we were working on for them to work on to build up their vocabulary and the speed with which they could recognize words. So that would help them. And Quizlet also has a way that they can hear how it's pronounced. So they can hear those in there as well. So that helped them with those particular activities. So that's where I started. But there are lots of different activities. And while I'm listing off some of the ones that I've given in the past, please put in the chat any ones that you have used or currently use that you give students as homework assignments. But things I do, I'll have a kid read and translate a story that we already covered in class to a family member or a friend. I will have them tell a story from pictures to a family member. I will have them write a story just for practice in writing on their own. Have them write a story. I do the flip grid type activities. What else have I given in the past other than what I've already told you? I do a lot of Quizlets, or have done. I don't do them so much anymore. I will make specific stories that I wrote and or that I record for them to answer. I've done those as well. The parents really like it when I have them read to them and read and translate or tell them a story. The parents like that. They get to see what the kid's doing in class, and that's very helpful. And the parents are pretty good, and they're like, amazed at what their kids can do. So that's very helpful. Those are some of the activities that I have given in the past. I'm trying to think of another one that I had, if there's any others. Can't think of any. I've also pre-recorded movie talks. So I will do the movie talk and I'll pre-record it. And then the kids can answer comprehension questions. That I did a lot when we were doing the distance learning. The asynchronous ones, I went ahead and I pre-made some of those so they could listen to them and then answer the questions afterwards. What kinds of activities do you guys give? That might also jog my memory of some of the other stuff that I used to give. As I said, right now, all that I give is the Quizlets. I'm not the quiz, I'm sorry, the flip.com assignments. Rereading also is a good thing. So if you've read a story or a novel, have them go home and reread the same chapter. That's very helpful. Catalina says, change the ending of a story we do in class. That's a great activity. Or change the details in a story, Catalina also says. Joanne says, I have a flip in the portal for the first assignment. Yeah, my first one was to introduce yourself in Spanish. That was the first one that I did for all of my classes. But yes, retelling a story from class is not really high on Bloom's taxonomy. So I like Catalina's ideas here about changing the story, changing the ending, or changing a detail in the story. One of the things I used to do, or I still do in class for other activities, is to have them write what happened before the story started and what happens after the story ended, or to change the ending of the story or change the beginning of the story. Then you get some higher order thinking skills in there. Joanne says, I expect them to study Quizlet sets and invite them to kick my butt in Quizlet matching. Awesome, awesome. That's always fun. It was really fun when we had a smart board. We don't have smart boards anymore. So it is not as fun where they can stand up and touch the board to get that done. But yes, the kids always liked having those little competitions. It's a fun little game that we play still. They drag and drop to match them up. We have competencias. That's an awesome one. Another idea you can do for creativity is give them a topic and have them find a creative way to teach that or create a game with that for an activity in class. That's another one as well. Jody says at Catalina, Martina Bex has several subplan packets that are all about changing up stories. Yes. That's on the higher Bloom's taxonomy. That's why it's a good activity. It has them thinking outside of the original context. Having students merely do retells is only application and recall. There's no brain thinking. They're not thinking for themselves in that at all. But when you have them recreate something new from something familiar, the story, by changing the ending or changing the details, that is when you're engaging the higher order thinking skills. Catalina says, thank you, I did not know. And Martina Bex is full of stuff that you can find. I use a lot of her stuff. Bryce Hedstrom has some things too that I've done as well. But seriously, you can look all over on YouTube and find videos that are comprehensible for your kids, and you can use them, and it saves you a lot of work. Dreaming Spanish, for Spanish, Alisa Yel, for French, what is it called? I think it's just called Beginning German for the German ones. Jody says, I leave those for subs and will let them finish in the next class rather than for homework if they didn't complete it. Yes, they work out very well doing that. Yes. So there's a lot of options, but be considerate when you're giving homework if you are going to give homework. First of all, think about why you need to give homework if you do and what your reason for it is. As I told you in the beginning, my reason for giving, I don't like to give homework. But this one short activity that takes them just a few minutes of their time gives a lot for me feedback. And so that's the only one I've been giving. But think about why you give homework, if you need to give homework, and what are you getting out of it, and what do the kids get out of it. If you don't have valid reasons for those, then don't give homework. They're not going to not learn because you didn't give them homework. And it's important also to give them homework. If you're going to give them homework, it's practice for something they've already been doing in class. It should not be new instruction, and it should not be, oh, we didn't finish this in class, and I know I didn't teach it to you, but I want you to go home and learn it on your own. That really frustrates both kids and parents too, because the parents can't help them with the assignments. So it should always be independent practice of something they've already had guided practice for. But again, I urge you to think about why you're giving homework and what value you're getting out of that homework, you and the students, before assigning it. And then think about their personal time. We don't like grading papers on our personal time. Do we really want to pile up kids' homework so that they don't have any personal time either? They need time to be kids, to socialize, to learn those behaviors, to have time with family, to do their activities or extracurricular activities as well, so they can be well-rounded human beings. But if you have decided that homework is for you and you are giving it, how do we assess it? Here's the big thing. At least on the individual basis, it should not count for a letter grade. It should be, did they complete it, and how well did they complete it? Only. And mainly for feedback. It should not affect their academic grade because it's practice. So think about it like sports. The practices that the kids do every day after school doesn't count in their win-loss totals for the season. Only the games do. And the practice is the homework. They're doing that to get better for the summative assessments. So my weekly flip grids, I don't give them daily. My weekly flip grids, I just mark it. Did they do it or did they not? That is it. Now, I told you that I take multiple ones to give me an overall sense for their speaking proficiency, and I'll give them a grade based off that. But I have lots of evidence, and it's not just one. It's not one thing. Because homework can artificially inflate or deflate a grade if you're giving it to them as a letter grade regularly. Jody says, our student athletes have games any day of the week and often travel 2 or more hours each way. Homework is busy work. Yes. And that's another thing. My school, who required us to give us 5 days of homework, we had to give 30 minutes for regular classes and an hour per class for advanced AP and honors classes. So think about how much work that would be. What if a kid had 4 honors classes out of 6 classes? That's 4 extra hours of homework, plus the 2 other classes that were only 30 minutes. So think about those kinds of things. Joanne says, last year I would assign garbanzo stories at the beginning of the trimester, do at the end. Awesome. So you want to basically assess it as completion. Did they do it? Did they not? And then provide feedback personally to them. I like it in our learning management system. I can put comments that I can write to them, and the kids get those. They can read through them, and it's really quick for me to type them up, and I can make comments about their work. So they get the feedback, which is much more valuable at this stage of the game in preparation for those formative and summative assessments that come later. So feedback is more important than the actual grade, but you want to hold them accountable. So we have a separate grade for work completion at our school. When I first taught high school, my first school, we did too. We had a work completion grade that was separate. Most of my schools I taught at, other high schools, I taught at 3 high schools, and 2 of them did not have a separate work completion grade. But you want to keep the homework grade isolated from the academic grade, because as I said, it can artificially inflate or deflate, especially if you are just giving, did they do it or not do it? So the kids who did it just to get it done and didn't really learn anything from it, their grade goes up even though their proficiency is not going up. And for kids who didn't do it and their proficiency is already pretty good, their grade is getting lowered because they're not doing the homework. And you want to avoid evaluating every piece of homework based on the quality of work or their proficiency level. Number one, it's supposed to be independent practice. And 2, it puts a burden on you as the teacher to grade all of that all of the time. And feedback is so much more valuable than the actual grade. But you can look at the body of work like I do for my flip.coms. You can look at the body of work and use the body of work to give an overall evaluation of a skill. But it's not my only evaluation of that skill. I have in-class evaluations as well, so it's just a supplementary evaluation. But I do feel that these flips, I get a really good sense of where they are proficiency-wise through them. Any other questions, comments, ideas about homework? Well, if there's no more questions or comments about homework, I wish everybody a great evening. I hope to see you next week. Next week, we're going to talk about movie talk. So hope you'll join us next week, Monday, same time, same channel, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time. And we will talk about movie talks next week. You're welcome, Catalina. If you found this helpful at all, Putting a like on YouTube would be greatly appreciated. Joanne says, I'd rather do everything in the room. I agree with you. And I do most of the stuff that way. It's just this one assignment that I do. And the reason we don't do it in class is when I first started doing it, I asked kids if they wanted me to give them 5 minutes at the end of the period to work on it. And everybody was too shy. They said, nope, we'll do it at home. So that's why I've left it to done at home. Okay, well, everybody, have a good week. I will see you next week. Enjoy your week. Have a good time. And we'll talk about movie talk next week. Have a good one, everybody. You're welcome, Ashed.